Assalamu alaikum, guys, and welcome to the Shia City podcast. You're here with Ali Abadi, and as per usual,
Salam alaikum.
Sheikh Bilal. So, Sheikh, I heard a very interesting question. I have no idea if it's true or false.
Okay,
Is it true that superheroes are haram?
maybe.
Maybe.
All right. So to kind of understand the context of this question, it plays on superheroes' origination comes from the imagination. And the imagination can be something that is used for good or for bad.
You can imagine. Wait. You're telling me if I imagine something, it could be deemed as bad.
It could lead you down a wrong path. So, okay, let me explain to you where this kind of originates from and where it comes from, right? A human being has a body and a spirit. The spirit, as it's described in Islam, is something that we can't analyze ourselves, right? Allah in the Quran, when He describes the spirit, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ in Surah Al-Kahf is a discussion there that says وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ قُلِ الرُّوحِ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي وَمَا أُوتِيتُ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. That when the people asked the Holy Prophet to explain to us and describe to us the spirit, and this was one of the challenges issued to the Holy Prophet, Allah instructed the Prophet that when they ask you about the Spirit, say that the Spirit comes into existence by Allah's command, and we don't give you any knowledge about it except for a little bit. That instruction, that statement tells us that the Spirit in itself is not something we can interact with our five senses. It's not something that exists within the realm of scientific measurability. The consequence of that is to learn about the Spirit, we have to look for instruction and teaching from Allah that comes through the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt after them to elaborate on it. When we talk about the Spirit, there are four main faculties of the Spirit. And these kind of tie a little bit to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. These tie a little bit to very Western psychological concepts as well, too, of how we understand who we are as a human being. But in Islam, there are four main categories. There's the intellect, there's the emotions, there's the hunger and needs, and then there's imagination. When describing these faculties, imagination exists as a faculty that man possesses, that man needs, but can also be harmful to him. Same way with each of these faculties. They can either be really good for you and important, or they can be really bad. So, for example, when we take a look and we see someone who, for example, is gluttonous about his food, that's a need that we have, but you can be gluttonous and you can mess it up. We can see someone in their emotions that they're completely either dead of emotion, and we say that's bad, or we can see someone that they're completely emotional and only emotional, and we say that's bad. Same thing with the intellect, that, for example, having no intellect is a bad thing, and being overly intellectual where you're clever, not from clever you go to like sneaky, or you go to, plotting things, and you go to kind of taking advantage of people, we say that that's bad too. The same way the imagination is something that humanity requires, but it can be good and bad.
Makes sense. So it basically depends on how wild your imagination is.
Well, let's be specific, right? So imagination, where it's good, is where we use our imagination to develop things like an iPhone, or trains, or cars, or microwaves, or all of these amazing things, or imagine space travel and try to put it together, or trying to figure out the universe, right? Within itself, it's not something, right? You never saw what, for example, like this microphone looked like before it was created. Someone used their imagination to come up with an idea that if I wanted to capture sound, what would that look like? So that's imagination. That's a good thing, right? So we need that imagination because it helps us progress as a society. It helps us develop new things, new tools, and build out things that are amazing and fantastic and that we learn from and we benefit from. But the other side of that coin is where we can use that imagination for evil.
So how can you use your imagination for evil?
So there's little evil and then there's big evil, right? Little evil, let me explain. Little evil is, for example, I use my imagination to come up with crazy things to kill people.
That's little?
Comparatively.
Okay.
Comparatively, that's a little. The bigger evil is I use my imagination to change people from worshiping and believing in Allah and believe in something else.
Shaitan.
It doesn't even have to be shaitan. I can come up with any concept I want. And if I distract you from God and I make you believe and focus your life on and your life's goal and purpose and everything that you do is something other than Allah, I just ruined your future.
Oh, okay.
Because if I don't believe in Allah, why would Allah put me in heaven or forgive me?
Yeah.
So that's why I said comparatively, it's a little evil to use, for example, your imagination to cause harm. Yeah, it's evil. It's bad. No, I'm not trying to say it's a good idea. Yeah, come up with ideas about it. No. But comparatively, if I can take you, so right, Shaitan's plan. Shaitan doesn't care if I commit one sin or two sins.
Yeah.
Shaitan cares that my connection with God is broken. Because Allah is so merciful, He can forgive all of my sins if I ask Him. But would He forgive me if I didn't ask Him?
Yeah, He wouldn't.
So if I'm Shaitan and I hate humanity, if, what's my goal? I don't want you to kick a kid or hurt a person or steal an old person's, walker.
Yeah.
I want you to stop believing in God.
Yeah.
Because if I can get you to stop believing in God and I break your connection with Allah, you've lost. There's no way back. There's nothing for you anymore. And that's what his goal is, right? His entire thing is, right? So if we understand, Shaitan hates us because he had everything sorted. He had everything golden and great, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and we can do the story of Shaitan some other time. But basically, Shaitan had raised himself to the level of angels and the best of the angels. Mm-hmm. And then Allah said, فَقَعُوا لَهُ سَاجِدِينَ. All of you prostrate in front of Adam. Yeah. Everybody did it except Shaitan. And the funny thing is, he wasn't trying to disobey God on purpose. He really didn't believe that he had to. Mm-hmm. So understand the sincerity, right? That his intellect couldn't comprehend the fact that Allah wanted him to prostrate to Adam. Which is why Allah asks him, مَا مَنَعَكَ أَن تَسْجُدَ بِمَا خَلَقْتُ بِيَدَيْ. Why did you not do sajda to what I created? And Shaitan replies, أَنَا خَيْرًا مِنْهُ خَلَقْتَنِي مِنْ نَارٍ وَخَلَقْتَهُ مِنْ طِينٍ. Meaning, he's legitimate. He's not being facetious. He's not being rude. He's actually being honest. That he's kind of saying, he's like, you made me from fire. You made him from clay. I'm better than him. Yeah. Why would I prostrate to that? So his sincerity in that situation and realizing that he messed up, Allah says, you're cast out of here. And now you're the accursed. You're evil. So Shaitan says, well, what about all that worship that I did of you, Allah? Allah says, ask me, what do you want? He says, give me a very long life and allow me to then be this one's enemy and show you that I am better than him and that this one really doesn't worship you. So Shaitan's entire thing is, he's like, if I lost everything and I'm going to hell, I'm taking you with me. Yeah. So his entire purpose is somehow get humanity to go to hell. And one of the tools he uses is our imagination to make us think about things other than Allah and believe in things other than God. So you see some people, right? And this is why I said that sometimes it can be a bad thing, that they use their imagination and they come up with these entire alternate realities or worlds or things that they believe in instead of believing in God. And it becomes their religion. Like that becomes their identity, whether it's Star Wars or Star Trek or Harry Potter or Twilight or Marvel, all these different things, they start believing in these concepts without realizing it and counting on these concepts instead of believing in God.
Yeah. So basically, you should stay away from superheroes, I guess.
You should be conscious about what the impact is.
Yeah.
Right? So the impact, what's really bad, is, for example, I watch these movies, I watch these ideas, and then when I'm in trouble, who do I call?
Iron Man.
Or I think of Superman, or I think of Batman, and I wish that they were here to help me, or I believe in their power. Even, for example, things like Harry Potter, right? If you're not careful, what does it do? It makes you think and wish that you had a magical potion or a magical cloak, or you could do magic instead of calling on God for assistance. Yeah. And it separates you from the idea of a creator. So it's with all of these, right? All of these things that are based in imagination, all these things that are not based in reality. And that's it. It can happen in reality, but it's much easier to happen in imagination. That if I invoke a person's imagination, I can make that imagination forget about God and focus on something else as my qibla, as my direction, as my focal point, as my goal in life. Yeah. Right? And look, as kids, right? After watching Dragon Ball Z, there used to be guys who'd go to the gym and they'd be like, I want to be as strong as Goku.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to go work out like him, right? They'd be these crazy ideas. Why? Where do they come from? They came from my imagination that this is something attainable and achievable and that this is a good idea.
I
So
mean, couldn't you kind of use it for good?
this is why I said it's not that it's
Yeah.
100% haram, but the problem is that you really have to deconstruct it and understand that something for entertainment or something for enjoyment or something that shows goodness and development doesn't change my qibla. It doesn't distract me from reality.
Yeah.
And if it does, then I'm in trouble. So the worst part about this entire situation is little kids who, when they get drawn into this, that's where they start changing their qibla
Yeah.
and they start believing in these concepts. So it's like turning a child onto these things without any guidance or instruction is harmful. And it's not just us who's coming to this realization, right? There's this larger conversation that talks about showing little girls Disney movies. And Disney movies that show, for example, you know, the older ones like Cinderella, Snow White, these other things that show, for example, the girl is completely helpless and she needs a man to come save her.
Yeah.
Now the feministic culture, which is a different conversation altogether, shows and says that, hey, why is it that she's not capable of taking care of herself? And why am I teaching this to my young daughter or my sister that wait for someone to come and save you or wait to, you know. So this mentality, right, that same thing, these fairy tales, these folklore, these imagination concepts, they have negative consequences in how we view ourselves and how we view society. So which is why something like a superhero, if it distracts me from my ibadat or from my personality or from what I want to achieve,
Yeah.
it can be bad.
Yeah. Do you let your kids watch these superhero movies?
No,
Oh.
they don't. But I don't make it say it because it's haram. I do it because to me, I don't have the time to sit there and make sure that I can mitigate the consequences of showing this content. And that's it. That you in a state of difficulty, right? Let's say, for example, an earthquake happens.
Yeah.
I don't want my kid thinking about why doesn't Flash come save me? Why doesn't Superman show up? Or why doesn't, you know, Iron Man come? Or why doesn't the Hulk come? Or all these other things. I don't want them thinking about that. And I think at a young age, people are very susceptible to these things. So there's actually a really interesting description of understanding how the four main faculties of the spirit interact. And it's an analogy that was drawn from some of the teachings of Imam Ali, where they describe and they say that imagine your four faculties of your spirit. There is a rider who's sitting on a horse and has a dog that comes with him. The rider is the intellect, the horse is the emotions, and the dog is your carnal desires and basic needs.
Okay.
And the imagination is the spy following behind the rider.
Okay.
A successful person is where the rider, the intellect, keeps the emotions in check so they keep producing and moving in the right direction. He keeps the dog at bay with him so that the dog protects him and serves him. And he keeps an eye on the spy to make sure that the spy doesn't overtake him. But look and see what happens if any one of these things come out of check. If the emotions become too extreme and too powerful, they drag the rider to his death, and they run off into a direction that no one can control. If the dog becomes too powerful, it tears apart the horse and it tears apart the rider and kills both of them.
Yeah.
And the worst consequence is if the imagination, if that spy becomes too powerful, he kills the intellect and takes control of the horse and the dog and guides them to a completely different path. So the importance of this conversation is learning that we have these faculties within us. They all serve a purpose. They're all beneficial, but they need to be kept in check. They need to be kind of controlled, and we need to have an intellectual approach of how we look at these things in life and how do we make decisions.
Yeah. So, is there anyone else we should look up to or be our superhero?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with superheroes as a concept, but it should be a superhero that invites you back to Allah. It should be a superhero that takes his power from God. It should be a superhero that makes you want to be a better person for the sake of Allah.
Imam Ali.
Absolutely. And that's a great example, right? That he's someone who, and this is where, you know, right, we talk about, when we even talk about ulama, scholars, that a scholar is someone who sitting in their company reminds you and takes you back to Allah. So which is why when we look at Imam Ali, yeah, he's the greatest of superheroes. Everything he did was for the sake of Allah. Every sacrifice that he made, every battle that he fought, and every victory that he had was for the sake of Allah. and looking up to all of the amazing things he did and trying to emulate him and be like him will only bring us closer to Allah, not further away. And it is. He's someone who accomplished something amazing, and we should appreciate that. We should be thankful of that. We should be proud of that.
Yeah.
That we have someone like Imam Ali, that we have someone like all of our Imams. And that's a great example to talk about, that for the love of Allah, look what Imam Ali accomplished.
Yeah.
So the idea, the concept of a superhero is not bad. But it should be someone who brings us back to Allah, who brings us back to the worship and wanting to be a pious person, not away from Allah, right? So for example, certain superheroes, right, like Batman, they take you away from God in the direction that they make you believe in your power more than anything else, that you can be smart enough, clever enough, and you can buy enough and do enough that you can change the world with it. Iron Man, same concept. Then you have others that basically say by dumb luck you became something special. And just by being lucky and being in the right place. And if you take a look at it, so many superhero movies begin with just a normal guy who had nothing special about him. Spider-Man suddenly became special, suddenly accomplished something amazing. And what is that doing? That's telling you you just need to wait to be lucky and your day will come. And what did it do? It turned us away from Allah. Instead, you look at, for example, even the example of Imam Ali. His entire life is spent in ibadat of Allah and worship of Allah and believing in Allah, and as a consequence, he develops these great attributes. Look at, for example, even some of our fuqaha and ulama who did amazing things. They didn't just accidentally, no, they served Allah and Allah gave them. So that's it, turning back to Allah and asking Him. Allah can give you ability, He can give you anything. Even when we take a look, for example, there's an entire discussion in the Quran about Saul, who's in the Quran, he's called Talut, and his discussion is in the Holy Quran, in Surah Baqarah. Talut's entire discussion is that the Bani Israel of the time asked their Nabi that ask Allah to give us a king that we can fight under this king, because we've been oppressed by so many people and the Anbiya weren't leaders of armies. So when the king says, the Prophet says, if Allah gives you a king, what if you don't listen to him? They said, these enemies of ours have abused us and oppressed us so much, of course we'll listen to the king. Why wouldn't we listen to the king? So sure enough, Allah designates Talut and sends the revelation that Talut will be your king. Talut was a poor man. He was a poor man. But he was super strong and super smart. And this was the designation from Allah. زِدْنَاهُ بَسْطَةً فِي الْعِلْمِ وَالْجِسْمِ. That the reason Talut was the king was because Allah had blessed him excessively with knowledge and strength. And he was the best of that society. And those people of the Bani Israel at that time, they refused to believe in his authority. Why? Because they said, we're richer than he is. We're from better families or respectable families than he is. And they wouldn't follow him. But Allah demonstrated and showed that I can grant you authority. And if I grant you authority, I will give you strength and I will give you knowledge. And that will make you the leader of people and give you the ability to help and do things. So even today, you want to talk about superheroes? Ask Allah directly. And look at the attribute He gives to who should be the leader and who's the best in a society. And that's someone who Allah has increased in strength and in knowledge.
Wow. So the real question is, who's your favorite superhero?
Imam Ali, hands down. It's Imam Ali's birthday too, man. It's a day of celebration. It's a good time.
You're taking us out after?
Just like Imam Ali would, fasting and praying.
Okay, nice. Thank you so much for that amazing conversation. Very interesting. I learned a lot. Until next week.
I'll be your superhero.